Today on Locked On Rockies, it's a very frustrating and annoying thing that the Colorado Rockies have not figured out first base. There's an interesting situation brewing, lots of options. Will they figure out first base at the winter meetings? I hesitate to think so.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 10th day of December in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And thanks to your support and thanks to all the everydayers out there, you've made Locked On the number one sports podcast and network out there. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for tuning in to your daily Colorado Rockies talk. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden. Been bringing you this daily Rockies podcast for over 5 seasons now and been following this team my entire life, bringing you that Rockies fan perspective from the ups to downs here. And finally in a winter here that actually got a little buzz around the Colorado Rockies. Isn't it strange? Doesn't it feel a little weird that the Rockies are in a situation where they are a team that's got a little bit of juice behind them in the winter meetings? It's pretty interesting. But one of the big things, one of the biggest question marks, and one of the big needs the Rockies have is first base. And there's been some chatter about that. And let's just also kind of go with that theme. We were talking about the Rockies trying to go with a new identity of, hey, we're not just handing out at bats here. It's got to be earned. So would you be more excited by a free agent signing for first base, or would you be excited with the Rockies kind of sticking maybe with Krim and hoping that Charlie Condon has a breakout moment and dominates his way onto the field? Let's talk about that, and we'll talk about the Rockies finalizing their pitching coaching staff and more, and a little bit more from the winter meetings here, all on today's episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. Got to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. All right. So the Rockies here, there's been some questions about what are they going to do at first base here, and I like how Patrick Saunders laid things out here with this piece. Rockies looking at possible free agents to fill gaping hole at first base, but this is a quote here from DePodesta at the winter meetings here. We're certainly entertaining the idea of some veterans that are out there, DePodesta said during his media session in the Rockies suite at the posh Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Right after this, I have a couple of meetings with some guys who represent some first basemen. But we also have some other guys still on the roster. One guy in particular had a nice September last year and did some interesting things. And then a first-round pick from 2 years ago is also a pretty good-looking player. So anyway, it could end up being a mix. And here's how Saunders sets it up here of where the Rockies' first baseman situation is at. The hole was created when Colorado cut ties with strikeout-prone Michael Toglia, the 2019 first-round draft choice in November. On Saturday, Warming Bernabel, who supplanted Toglia at first base last season, cleared outright waivers and elected free agency. And then, of course, there is oft-injured veteran Chris Bryant, whose chronic back issues could prevent him from ever playing baseball again. For now, the only first baseman on the 40-man roster is Blaine Krim, who slashed .241, .295, .556 with 5 homers and 2 doubles in 15 games at the end of the season. The Rockies claimed Krim off waivers from Texas on August 15th. Krim, 28, was the guy that DePodesta said had a nice September. We've got Krim coming into battle for that job, manager Warren Safer said. I feel like guys are going to come out in competition for that spot. Here's a little bit more just about Charlie Condon. Selected out of Georgia with the 3rd overall pick, Colorado's number 2 prospect overcame injuries in his first professional season to make an impressive showing in 25. At High A Spokane, he hit .312 with 3 homers in 35 games. Struggled a bit to his when he got promoted to Double A, but still at .235 and slugged 11 home runs in 55 games. Had a great Arizona Fall League, .337, .439, .434 with 1 home run and 13 RBI in 22 games. With a double and 2 triples there in that option. I think for me, And maybe this is being too hopeful and maybe leaning too we just saw what happened when the Rockies went youth. I think the best possible outcome for the Rockies at first base is a Charlie Condon breakout, because you have Krim to back him up. You have a guy there, and he might flash. I as much as I like in my gut say that, and I do believe that, because it would be really good to see him continue this trend of, Charlie Condon, the injury was there, but there is some steam there. Like there does seem to be some stuff when, especially the strong Arizona Fall League. I know that's but that's a tough place to be successful. And for you to be to make a mark like that, to have that impressive of a stretch, I think maybe it'll be a situation where I don't want him to be, rushed up there. Maybe he needs a little bit more time. Maybe a better option for second half of the season. So I think I don't think you can go too big on a big free agent guy for first base. But I don't think that I don't think you should limit yourself there either. I definitely think that having the meetings, and if the Rockies do and probably should sign a veteran first baseman, that just gives you a little bit extra security, and that gives you a little bit more of a situation where I feel like you can feel like you have a little bit more of an options there. Especially if the Krim could be the better option, and you just go with that. Especially if you sign one of these guys to maybe a deal that isn't a fully guaranteed type of thing. But with some of the names out there, and again, they're not necessarily going to knock your socks off type of guys, but there's enough name recognition where it's not like you're going to be able to do like a minor league deal with an invite to camp or something like that. You're going to have to spend a little bit for some of these. On the total flip side, it would be awesome if I would be all aboard with the Rockies signing Pete Alonso. You know what I mean? It would cost way too much money, but it'd be really fun. It wouldn't make any sense, and especially for a guy that's looking to compete and make his money, because that's the real answer of to first base would be, I think, to make kind of like one of those splashy moves, get one of those already established bats. That would be the easiest way to fix the issues at the position. But as we've talked about before, it really doesn't match any sort of the timeline either. So I think the best solution for first base in where the Rockies are at would be a great run from Charlie Condon. But I do think that the more realistic and I think the safer, quote unquote, option would be to try to go out there and get a free agent first baseman that is a guy that you can count on the offensive side, because that's the other thing too, right? With first base and with this position, the Rockies, if they are going to bring someone in or turn to Krim or Condon, they got to produce on offense. It's especially because, we've talked about, as much as I give props to good first base defense, we know it's not as important of a defensive position as others. So the first base can't be just a negative or a problem for the Rockies, because you can't have someone that's what was so frustrating about Michael Toglia, where it was just like you can't just have someone just not be impactful with the strikeouts. Obviously, is that, but that position, offense is part of the game there, or at least I guess that's what it feels like. When we've seen it at its best there at first base. So as much as I want to sit here and believe that the Rockies, can continue to ride the momentum of Condon, I do think that it does make a little bit more sense to buy yourself some time with Charlie to make sure that he comes and to have him have a strong spring and maybe some warm up time. Again, we're talking about a guy there that did have some time at Double-A, but wasn't necessarily knocking the doors off of it. Despite, I like the fact that the 11 home runs there. I like the fact that power has continued to be a part of his game, run scoring opportunity. I think that if he can just take one more step and then demonstrate being ready for the major league level, eventually he's going to have to be tested at the major league level, right? But if it's a strong spring, right, like a good spring, it would be I would really like for him to force his way onto the roster, and it would make it difficult for Blaine Crim too. But again, who knows? Crim, we'll see. A guy the Rockies got on waivers, a guy that's got a little bit more, a little bit more history, and one hot streak at the end of a year for the Rockies in garbage time for him. It doesn't necessarily make you a standout. But that would make for some solid competition and at least an intriguing first base core there. If the Rockies do go out and bring some names here, here's some names that Saunders lists here. It is Josh Bell, Luis Arias, and Ryan O'Hearn. Again, not necessarily knocking the door, knocking your socks off. But Josh Bell does hit baseballs pretty hard. 20 home runs last year, 237, 63 RBI. Not necessarily, anything super great, but could maybe benefit from being in Coors Field. 193 home runs throughout his career here. Hit as many, earlier on. We're talking about 37 home runs in 2019. I know that's a while ago now in the beginning stages of his career, but 22 home runs there in last year and nearly 20 home runs. A near consistent 20 home run hitter, someone that could benefit a little bit from playing at Coors. And here's a nice plus here: 140 games. That's 468 at bats. Only 88 strikeouts there. I think that's a key thing here. He's an all-star, a multi-time Silver Slugger. If that's the type of profile of guy that you can bring in, I wouldn't be too upset with that. If you get Josh Bell on an affordable 1-2 year deal, and you have that on the background, as you can basically plug and play with DH. And let's put a pin in it right there, because the Rockies, if they do go with the free agent veteran option, it could create, and this situation would also work if Charlie Condon was, is playing well. If they can get production from first base, whether that be from Condon or the free agent, that's going to give them a little bit of flexibility with the DH, which might allow them to create some lineups that could, maximize some playing time for some guys and make for some interesting looks on the field as well. Let's dive into that and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. NFL Sundays move so fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And hey, I know the offense for the Broncos isn't looking great, but Bo Nix is passing the ball a lot, so you might want to keep your eyes on those Bo Nix passing yards, maybe the completions, not so much the yards, because we know it can kind of fluctuate with Bo. It's been interesting. Be curious to know how people are feeling about Bo Nix, but this is a Rockies show. Well, we're also letting you know that FanDuel is the place you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. You can bet on the next touchdown score, the drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We are also brought to you by Doer. And man, I have been so glad that I've been repping my Doer flannel and jeans. They have been perfect for this time of the year, and especially the travel that I've been doing, because spending a lot of time in planes this month, spending a lot of times where the temperature is changing, going from hot to cold, cold to hot. You never know what might be happening, and Dewar has me covered because they got the most comfortable pants and clothes I own. And hey, I'm looking a little good. I'm usually a sweatpants type of guy. Now I'm rocking some performance denim from Dewar, and it's pretty great because Dewar's denim and lifestyle apparel is engineered for movement and versatility. Dewar invented the original performance denim and gives you the best of both worlds, combining classic jeanswear style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It's time for you to experience the comfort of Dewar. I know you'll love these. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Check out the Dewar store right here in Denver at 2621 Laramie Street. Mention my promo code LOCKEDONDenver in store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopdewar.com. That's shopdewar.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopdewar.com/LockedOnDenver. Back at it here on Locked On Rockies, segment number 2 of today's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast. Thanking you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day and making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Rockies with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Head on over to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub to learn more. You can also find that in the show notes too. So we are rocking and rolling, talking about first base here, as Deadshot says, I really like to see this hire when talking about Josh Burns. I'm disappointed with the Bernabel deal and with the Romo deal especially, but I have a question for you. Who do you think should be starting at first base next season? And that's what we've been trying to figure out, kind of asking the question. What would make you more pumped? Would it be a Josh Bell, Luis Arraez level free agent signing? Because it sounds like that could be a possibility. You know, these guys that aren't that you know, the probably the more mainstream narrative around them is not necessarily the most impactful players, but we've seen guys, we've seen people bounce back playing first base at Coors Field, at least for a season or two. So a small short-term stint. That's when, you know, one of my focuses here. If the Rockies are gonna go free agent with to address first base, got to be short-term deal, 2 years maximum, because with 2 years, that gives you a little bit of time to work with and figure out how much you like Charlie Condon and where you're going to be at. You got Blaine Crim there. You got those options. But I was saying before the break that the Rockies, they need production from that position, because with the production there, say, you know, the Rockies do bring in Josh Bell and he's hitting well, maybe, and like we said, he's got some good power numbers. He's a guy that's been a silver slugger in the past. He's a guy that can leave the yard. You can now kind of plug and play with some options with DH and still get Charlie Condon some time. Charlie Condon can play first base. Bell can DH. Hunter Goodman can catch. And then, you know, Goodman, because there was a mention, I can't remember who I saw this from. Maybe I think I might have retweeted it. I'll need to scroll back. But there was some mention of Hunter Goodman going to get a lot more of that, a lot more DH and a lot more of, I think literally the quote of Cal Raleigh treatment, where going to be hitting on days that he's not catching certainly. And I think that might be that's a good step for him. I think Hunter Goodman's biggest strength is going to be an offensive threat for the Rockies. I mean, I hope that he can you know, become a better defensive catcher, but I think the best way that Hunter Goodman can contribute is to be an offensive force, to be that threat, to really solidify himself as that power hitter. So if you're getting the production there, whether it be Charlie Condon, whether it be that, you know, a veteran first baseman, whether it be Blaine Crim, it just does open up. It gives you some kind of things that you can plug in some options to still see what happens here with DH, you know, especially because backup catcher is going to be really interesting now, especially with the Rockies not, you know, keeping Romo. I kind of thought that was going to be the plan for next year, was Romo hopefully taking the next step, the steps to become the backup catcher and get some time at the major league roster. So it's going to be interesting, and still using that DH spot should free them up, because that's why you got to move on from the gluttony of these outfielders that you got, right? You gotta trim that to make sure that you're not, it's your fourth best outfielder is, you're the option you want to go with DH. And these guys, these veterans too, they got to be able to come in and be able to produce, right? We watched Orlando Arcia, we watched Kyle Farmer. These guys are veteran players, but they didn't necessarily really make much of an impact on the field. Had a couple of moments here and there, but certainly were not changing things up for the Rockies. So the Rockies, not only do they need to find a shorter term deal, they also need to to splurge a little, I think, to bring in someone that is an impact player. And as much as I've been talking the hypothetical of Josh Bell, we're talking about a 0.4 WAR player here. But Kyle Farmer last year, when you're looking at him, he was a negative 0.8 player. When you look at Orlando Arcia from last year here, negative 1.2 WAR player. Let's look at Estrada as well as an option, negative 0.4, and then Michael Toglia, one of their big options. Michael Tolio's negative 1.7. So again, Josh Bell, not knocking your socks off, but have performed better than everybody the Rockies were trotting out there. And as we've mentioned before, Luis Arraez, despite the issues on defense, which could be a problem with the Rockies, we saw how much trouble that they got in with poor defense here in 2025. He was at 1.2. If you can bring in these type of guys on those short-term deals, you should expect to get a little bit more from that position. Maybe it's not going to be all-star caliber, but at least these guys are going to be able to come in, and Luis Arraez will hit singles and get on base, and Josh Bell can hit you home runs and maybe find a little bit more and recapture a little bit more of that power stroke hitting in the dog days of summer at Coors Field. So I think first base is something that, as I know, I started and I said I would love it for Charlie Condon to be the answer. I think it makes a little bit more sense to make a mini splash and add a guy like these guys that can be positive impact players, the Luis Arraez, Josh Bell level players. Bring one of them in, and I think that puts you in a better spot, because hey, say Charlie Condon's tearing the cover up, you bring him up. Boom. You can drop those guys. You can drop Josh Bell to play in DH, and Charlie Condon plays first base for you. Boom. They're both in the lineup. If Bell's swinging a good bat, he's still in the lineup. You're not worried about the defense. Charlie's playing his position. You can see what he's bringing you there at first base. Hunter Goodman is catching. He's going to be catching primarily most of the time. And then if he's not catching, boom. You have him DH, you have Charlie play first base, and you give the vet a rest. Like that certainly can be it. But again, on top of all of this thing is the mention that they said at bats have to be earned this year. And I know they're saying that at the winter meetings this early. I understand that. I'm just buying into that. But if that is the case, I think that's why the Rockies are going to be looking into more of the. I think the Rockies are going to lean more towards, let's bring in a veteran guy here and let's see what happens. Maybe I just want the Rockies to, make a deal at the winter meetings and draw a little bit more buzz. All right. The Rockies finalized their pitching coaching staff. Let's run through it here and just run through some of the reaction coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. I've used Gametime for a multitude of events, and I love the deals, and I love the fact that I'm getting my upfront pricing. I'm getting a view from my seat, so I know exactly what I'm paying for, know exactly where I'm sitting, and I'm getting a great deal while doing so. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go Gametime. Locked On Rockies here, back with you all, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. And the Rockies now filling out their pitching coaching staff here, making things official there with all sorts of 4 positions. And I believe it's there. It seemed like it felt like they were creating a new position. I had never heard of one of the titles that did exist here, but some of the buzz here was looking pretty good. People were impressed with this, and I think this just follows with things. The headlines that we're seeing right now, the people that are being brought into the Rockies are looking to do things differently, and with the amount of change and with the amount of turnover we've seen, the Rockies can't not embrace some of this stuff, right? They can't not let these people do what they're going to do. They've brought in so many new faces. They've brought in so much change. How can you sit there and not give these people a chance? We're used to these, the people brought in to help with analytics and leaving in 8 months. No, there's so much over. There's a lot of change here. And I think the Rockies are raising some eyebrows. So Alon Leichman is the pitching coach. Gabe Ribas is the assistant pitching coach. Matt Bushman is the bullpen coach. And Matt Daniels is the director of pitching. I don't know what that is, but this is from Spencer Smith here. The Rockies' new director of pitching, Matt Daniels, worked with Adam Ottavino to develop a cut fastball and was one of the first drive line employees. And we know that has made an impact. We know Ottavino was connected there. We know that he was found. A lot of people have turned to stuff like Driveline to find success here. Here is a little bit more here from the Rockies press release. Ribas has spent the past 5 seasons as the Detroit Tigers director of pitching after initially being hired in 2021. See, director of pitching. It's right here. It's a title. I had to know. There's just so many coaches, right? There's so many elements of a staff there. Anyway, I'm sorry I got distracted right there. But Ribas, director of pitching the last 5 years. Prior to his time, he spent 4 seasons as the pitching coordinator in the Dodgers system. 2 strong pitching staff, strong pitching staffs. They're being part of those organizations, both the Tigers and the Dodgers, having some top tier pitching talent. Hey, and he's also got some ties to the Greeley Bear there, UNC Bears, among other things. So really like the resume there. Bushman was the special advisor of player development in the Cubs system. And he was also the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen coach from 19 to 22, where he also was director of pitching development prior to the 2020 season. He was also in the San Francisco Giants system. Really great connections to a lot of organizations here. And that's the type of stuff we're looking for right here with these moves and these hires, right? These are baseball minds being brought in right now. These are guys that have had a lot of experience from a lot of different areas, and now hopefully going to be able to come together to try to crack the biggest code in baseball pitching wise is how do you figure out to handle pitching at altitude? And hopefully they do. But just like with everything, I am loving the fact that there is positive energy around the Colorado Rockies right now in the wake of this, right? We had to wait a while for the dust to settle after the season and for the Rockies to start bringing people on and for the Rockies to start making these changes. But now we are finally starting to see, hopefully, the real turnaround here of this post 3 straight 100-loss seasons, one of the second worst baseball season of all time by a Major League Baseball team, and still worse if we kind of look at some metrics. At least this stuff does feel different. It does feel like the people they're bringing in are going to have those outside perspectives, or at least their resumes suggest so. But the biggest question will remain, will they be allowed to implement their vision? That is going to be the question that remains answered. And will that vision pay out on the field? That's the ultimate question as well. Still too far to know for that. But folks, thank you so much for making your first listen Locked On Rockies, because that is going to do it for us today. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. And again, folks, make sure you're checking out lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club to check out our new Everydayer Club. For your second listen of the day, go check out Sully and the Locked On MLB podcast. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on YouTube as well. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. Let me know what's on your mind in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. And until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.